y'all, today we're going to be talking about 10 palettes that launched this year that I decided to anti-haul. These were palettes that tempted me in one way or another, but ultimately I decided not to buy them, and I am feeling happy with my decision. There's so much new stuff launching all the time, so many things we buy, so many things we want. I thought today we would just focus on our good purchasing decisions, the things that I said no to and I am happy about. Let's jump into it. Went through and looked at the new releases that we talked about this year. I do a judging new makeup video here on my channel every single Sunday. We talk about the new releases and we judge them. Do we like them? Do we not like them? Do we want to buy them? Do we not want to buy them? And so I was kind of looking back through, and I didn't want to talk about palettes that I had no interest in, because where would the fun be in that? You know, we already talk about all the new releases every single Sunday. There's no need to revisit palettes that I'm not even interested in. But I did see 10 palettes that I actually thought about buying. I went back and forth on. I wanted for one reason or another, but ultimately I decided to say no and not buy these palettes, and I feel good about my decision to not buy these. Now, there were several things that I was still like, oh, maybe I should buy those, maybe I will buy in the future. So I could definitely do a video like that as well if you like, but let's talk about some of the palettes I said no to, and let's start off with this one from Beauty Bay, because I really like Beauty Bay's formulas. I like their palettes. Actually, let me slide my chair over to the side so I can pop up a bigger photo for y'all. Okay, so this is the by Beauty Bay Retro Love palette, and this is totally a palette that I would normally go for. I really like palettes like this. We have blues, we have yellow, pink, we have purples, we have mint shades, but I didn't pick this one up, and I really was surprised at myself that I didn't buy it, because like I said, I really love Beauty Bay palettes. I love when they do this format of palettes. I think the price point is great and the quality is usually on, but I said no to it. I said no to it. I do feel like I have these shades in other palettes like this from Beauty Bay. Not all together, but I felt like I could kind of shop my Beauty Bay stash, pull in several different palettes, and have these shades. So ultimately, I decided to pass on this one. And I'll also go ahead and throw this out there. If I am saying I didn't buy this palette or that palette because of this reason or that reason, and you bought that palette and you love it, I think that's wonderful. I'm so happy with you, like you and your decision. I'm happy you spent your money on something you love. I am just here telling you I'm happy I got to keep my little monies, and maybe, you know, I thought this video would help you if you did say no to something and you're still kind of thinking about it. Maybe this will help you like stay strong in your non-purchasing decisions. But of course, no judgment from me ever if you do decide, hey, I still want that, and you decide to treat yourself. You know, you do what you want to do. I'm just sharing, like, I'm happy with my anti-haul choice. Okay, I kind of surprised myself by not buying this Natasha Denona Mini Starlet palette, because the color story really didn't tempt me. It's not that. It's Natasha Denona is one of my favorite brands. So anytime they release a product, I'm intrigued. Anytime they release an eyeshadow palette, I would say there's like a 80% chance I'm going to buy it. I have so many Natasha Denona palettes because I love Natasha Denona's quality. So usually the brand puts out something, I'm like, take my money, sign me up. But this palette, I think it's pretty. I'm not saying it's not pretty. If you have it, you love it, wonderful. I know myself though, and for me this would be a companion palette. And I don't necessarily need a companion palette like this. So it would be beautiful to mix in with other shades, maybe some deeper, darker jewel tones, things like that. Use these for blending, inner corner highlight. The shimmers look beautiful. But overall, I didn't need it. Like, I feel like I have maybe not these exact shades from Natasha, but I definitely think I could shop my stash and get the vibe of this if I ever wanted to. So even though one of my favorite brands, even though it's not super expensive, like the Beauty Bay wasn't super expensive, you know, I believe it's under $30. The Natasha Denona 5-pan, under $30. I still am proud of myself for passing on it, because that's $30, $27, whatever it is that I get to keep, you know? Okay, I was really tempted by the ColourPop Winx palette. I forget the exact name. Okay, it's when they collab with the little winks. Because this is color from ColourPop. It's like a rainbow palette that's pastel. And I like ColourPop. When ColourPop gets it right, they get it right. Sometimes they do palettes that are better than others. You know, I feel like ColourPop has a good formula, and then they have a great formula. But even their good formula is good, but their great formula is great. And I was just tempted with this. You know, I'm like, oh, do I need it? Do I need it? But I do have other pastel palettes from some of my favorite brands, and that helped me say no to this. Even though I was still contemplating it, I didn't feel like a strong pull to the collaboration, so that kind of helped me say no. And in hindsight, I'm very glad I did, because Blend Bunny, BellaBeauteBar, like they put out pastel palettes later in the year, right? I think after this Winx. I know for sure Blend Bunny came after the Winx, but I can't remember if BellaBeauteBar came before. Anyways, brands that I like their shadow formula for even more put out pastel palettes, and I'm much happier having those than I would be having this. Again, if you have it, you love it, I love it for you. And I don't think I would have regretted my purchase if I bought this, because like I said, I do like ColourPop. I think this is really cute. I think it has beautiful shimmer and matte shades, but in hindsight, now looking at it, I can feel confident in my decision that I said no. I was so tempted to buy this palette from MAC Cosmetics. I don't even remember the name of it, but I had this in my Ulta cart. I contemplated this. Like, I was one click away from owning this palette, because when MAC like came out with their Stranger Things collection, I bought that. When they did their Black Panther collaboration, or Wakanda Forever, I bought that and I enjoyed it, and I also really enjoyed the collaboration aspect of it. I love looking at the packaging, and I thought the products were nice. So I was really tempted when I saw this, because we don't see a lot of color in palettes like this from MAC. So seeing that, honestly, that one column of green, pink, and blue pulled me in. And then looking at the rest of the palette, seeing a white, a teal, a yellow, another pink, like it really tempted me. Like I said, I had it in my cart. I kept thinking about it, and ultimately I decided not to purchase, and I forgot about it. Like, I forgot about it until I was going back through and looking at the releases. And then I was like, oh yeah, I really wanted that palette. And it's an expensive palette. It's not, you know, it's not pennies. Like, it's an expensive palette. So I'm really happy that I chose not to buy that palette, even though I do think it is really, really pretty. Again, I do talk about the new releases every single Sunday, and sometimes we're like, I'm definitely gonna buy this. I can 100% say, this is coming to me. Some things I'm like 100% no, not even interested. But this was one that I was like, yeah, I think I'm gonna buy this. And I said no, and I'm happy about it. So I was super tempted by this Trixie palette because it is so colorful. And I have been curious about Trixie. And I keep thinking, when they come out with a release that's perfect for me, I'm going to buy it. When they come out with a release that's perfect for me, I am going to buy it. I'm going to try the brand. And they came out with this palette that was colorful. But it just missed the mark a little bit for me to purchase it. And in hindsight, when I was thinking about this, I was like, what are some of the brands? Because there were several palettes that instantly came to mind. And then Trixie was a brand that came to mind. Not necessarily the palette, but the brand. And I'm like, oh yeah, they did that bright palette. And what held me back from this one is the lack of contrast. There's no really deep shade. So of course I could create looks with this. You don't have to have deep dark shades, but I know for a palette to be a favorite for me, I usually like to pull in some deep dark shades. I mean, hello, like the look I have on today, we've got a lot of contrast in the look. Everything I'm wearing, I will put in the description box too. Some of the links may be affiliated, some of them may not be. I have my affiliate codes listed there. I have just discount codes listed there. I try to tag products on YouTube. You know, whatever I can do, it'll be in the description box. But ultimately, I like the packaging. I love the little mushrooms. I love the whole vibe of it. I like the color story. But I feel good about saying no. I kind of surprised myself when I passed on the Pat McGrath holiday palettes for this year. Normally, I buy the Pat McGrath holiday palettes every single year. In the last 3 years, I believe, we've gotten a larger palette from Pat McGrath, and they usually have some type of non-brown, non-pink shades in them. A little variety, you know? And I really enjoy those. They're usually under the $100 mark, whereas her Mothership palettes are over $100. And I really enjoy buying her larger holiday palettes. So this year she did something different. She did some mini palettes, and she did these 9 pans with 2 blush shades. And I was able to talk myself out of these because of the blushes. They weren't going to be new to me shades, if I remember correctly. I do have several Pat McGrath blush palettes. I absolutely love Pat McGrath eyeshadows and blushes. I think they're beautiful. But this wasn't a unique enough launch from Pat McGrath for me to purchase it. So I surprised myself, quite honestly. I had to give myself a pat on the back because usually Pat McGrath holiday, like, they get my money. They get my money, no questions asked. But this year I asked some questions. So I'm proud of myself for saying no. I still think these look beautiful. I'm sure the quality is amazing, but I feel happy that I kept my little monies. Melt is another brand that I love, and they released their Dark Matter palette this year. It had previously been a stack, and I normally buy Melt palettes. I normally do. I normally buy them because it's a brand that I just really enjoy. I like the overall aesthetic of the brand. I like the things they put out. Not necessarily everything is right up my alley, but when it comes to eyeshadow palettes, I like to buy the Melt palettes. I like to test them. I like to try them. But this palette, I knew I didn't need it. I'm like, Heather, let's have a conversation, Heather. So you don't need it. That was basically the conversation, okay? I'm like, listen, are you going to reach for this palette over your other Melt palettes that have some similar shades? And I had to be honest with myself and say no, probably not. Am I going to reach for this palette over my, you know, Unearthly neutral palettes, my Adept, my Blend Bunny, my Nomad? No. While I love Melt, I just feel like I have these shades in other Melt palettes. So what was I bringing this into my collection for? I also didn't love the packaging or anything because packaging, it's an experience for me. It can definitely not completely sell me on something, but it can tip me over the edge. If this had been in kind of different format, different packaging, maybe it could have pushed me over the edge, but overall, I was able to walk away from it. And I'm happy about that. I'm not gonna lie, I almost bought the Profusion Jurassic Park palette. It was the nostalgia for me. I, you know, have fond memories of Jurassic Park. I still like the movies. I think this is a cute overall collection. I didn't need the palette. And I said in my video, I'm pretty sure, I don't need this palette. But had I seen this in my local store, I don't know that the self-control, the restraint would have been quite as strong, because I think it's so fun. And I think Profusion, like when they create a good product, they create a good product. Like the Casper highlighters and lip toppers, 10 out of 10. So I mean, that launched after this. Before this, I had tried some Profusion things that I liked as well. So this would have been a fun palette. This would have been a fun palette to get. But now that I've had time to think about it, I've had time to process it, I'm like, you know what? If I go to Walmart and I see this, I can say no. I can feel confident in my decision. I still think it's fun. I still think it's fun. But I don't need this. I don't need this. And I kept my money. Again, I don't think it was super expensive. I think it was under $20. Maybe I'm incorrect about that. But I stayed strong, and I'm glad I did. I'm proud of myself. Okay, I said no to this Juvia's Place palette. This is the Afro Galactic palette. This is really pretty. This is a beautiful color story. Looking at it now, I really like it. I like that we kind of have some cool tones and some bright colors, some more muted colors with the brights. I think this looks really cool. I like the size of it too. I think that's really nice, like a 20 pan palette. Still larger, but not overwhelming in my opinion. It looks like we have a good mix of mattes and shimmers, and it sounds like I'm talking myself into this palette, right? But I'm glad I said no, because I don't know how much I would reach for this palette. Looking at the shades, I think it's beautiful. I see several looks I could create with this, but I don't know. Like, I have so many favorites, and I think I feel good about saying no to this palette. The thing that I think is just what really made me be like, oh, maybe I do need that, is that hot pink in the kind of center with that purple, with that muted olivey green. It's interesting to me, but I definitely feel like I can go through my own collection and I can pull these colors and create something if that's what I want to do. Listen, I love buying new makeup. I love testing new makeup, trying new makeup. I love creating looks, but I cannot buy everything. Maybe you can buy everything. Maybe you cannot buy everything. And I want to try things that really like captivate me. If it's my favorite brand, you know, I'm like, I'm buying it. I'm buying it. I don't care. But that means sometimes I have to say no to other things. Or if it's a brand that I don't really know and they release a color story or formulas or something that I'm really into, I want to try it. So if I want to try all these wonderful things, it means sometimes I have to say no to other things. And that's really what this video is about. It's not saying you shouldn't buy this. It's just saying if you said no, pat yourself on the back, because we don't need everything. We don't need everything. And as beautiful as this Juvia's Place palette is, I don't need it. And if I feel the urge to have this color story, I can definitely shop my stash. Last but not least, I wanted to talk about Huda Beauty's Pretty Grunge. I bought the holiday palette from last year from Huda Beauty, the Empowered palette, and I thought it was a good palette. But For the price point, I do prefer my Natasha Denona quality. And I think I could get a similar color story, a similar vibe from Natasha Denona palettes. So I was like, you know, I don't need this year's holiday palette, but the brand and the palette is so hyped that it was tempting to me. I said I wasn't going to buy it. When I saw the palette, I'm like, I'm not going to buy it. But of course, seeing everybody's reviews and videos and photos, it definitely tempted me. And I thought a couple of times of like, oh, maybe I should just buy it and test it and try it. But I noticed the people who were really loving it really love Huda's eyeshadows, and I know that while I like them and I think they are good, they are not my favorite. And like I said, for that price point, there are other formulas and other brands that I like better. So I'm proud of myself for not giving into the hype. I'm proud of myself for watching the reviews and saying, you know what, like I trust this person's reviews. They really love Huda shadows. But I know myself and I prefer other formulas. So I was able to stay strong and I feel good about it. But I definitely was being influenced by all the hype the palette was getting. I know so many people love that palette. I'm sure you may own that palette, may want that palette, maybe not. But yeah, I'm proud of myself for staying strong because that one is, you know, it's a pretty pricey palette. Alright, y'all, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope that you don't take this as an overall negative video because the purpose of this video was to talk about palettes that tempted me. And if they tempted me, that means they were appealing in one way or another. It's not to bash these palettes. It's not to bash you if you love these palettes. It's just to say, let's kind of look back at the year as we're wrapping up. We're getting towards the end of 2023. Let's look back at those palettes that tempted me, that I decided to resist, and I'm proud of myself for. If you have said no to some makeup that you want and now you're like, you know what, I made a good decision, I really did not want/need that thing, then good for you. I'm proud of you. I'm proud of myself. Oh, you know, we're just out here anti-hauling things and being happy with our choices. Please do subscribe. And if you like this type of content, I do make judging new makeup videos every single Sunday where we talk about what we want and what we don't want. Even things that we want but we're not gonna buy, kind of like today. So definitely subscribe. I have so many videos coming and I will see you very soon in another video. Bye!